it's Mario here, coming at you from the beach here in Playa del Carmen. It's a little bit of a windy day, but other than that, it's perfect, sunny, and awesome to be outside, to be filming a video. And in this one, I wanted to address a topic and a question that I get a lot, and that is, how do you set your calories for fat loss? And this is a question, and I know where it's coming from, because I talk so much about calories, I talk so much about that caloric deficit and the importance of the caloric deficit if you want to lose body fat. And of course, the next natural question is, well, how do you set up your diet to actually have that caloric deficit? And this is something I see a lot of guys get wrong. I see a lot of people make a mistake with this, especially with that initial setup, which then basically leads that they are not setting themselves up for success long-term when it comes to the diet. So how do I approach this? Well, if you've been following my channel for a while now, you know that first step of a fat loss diet, first step of a dietary change in calories is to estimate your maintenance level of calories. And I've actually made a video on this already, so I would recommend, before you start any kind of fat loss calorie amounts or whatever you want to calculate, is first determine your maintenance calories. And I'm going to leave that video in the description below as a link so you guys can check that out. There's two methods there. One is a little bit more accurate, one is a little bit less accurate, but these methods will allow you to estimate the amount of calories you need currently to maintain your body weight. So this is the amount of calories that if you keep eating, it's all gonna stay the same. And it's critical to spend 2 weeks to estimate this if you want the most accurate measurement. So you're gonna look at the average weight change in those 2 weeks after you set up your calories, your macros, after you keep the diet pretty consistent, you track everything. This is gonna give you very, very valuable information. And now, this is what most people get wrong. This is where most people just do that estimation, take 1 or 2 weeks, or even just use a calculator, and then they start cutting calories. So they typically, what most people will do, and that's a good starting point, is to cut about 20% of your calories below maintenance. So let's say you're eating 2,500 calories to maintain, 20% of that would be a 500 calorie deficit per day. If you times 7, so 7 days, that's gonna be a 3,500 calorie deficit, which should yield you about 1 pound loss per week in terms of body weight, right? And that's a good thing. But here's one thing that is wrong with that, right? We cannot actually calculate our calorie intake. We cannot actually predict our total daily energy expenditure because there's a lot of factors involved. Your genetics, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis levels, your BMR is gonna change a little bit through your diet. There's a lot of factors. Just by the fact that you're eating less food, your calories will be a little bit different because now your body is spending less calories to metabolize that food. So your thermic effect of food is lowered. So now, how do we combat this? Well, this is why I suggest an extended phase and a review post that phase where you will actually determine the calories for fat loss. So how does this work? Well, you spend the first 2 weeks estimating maintenance. That's great. Okay, you cut calories by 20%, but now, for the first week after that, you don't look at this as data to estimate your future calorie intake. So for the first week, what's gonna happen is that you typically cut a little bit of carbs. So that means that the data that you're getting from measuring your body weight, the data that you're getting from measuring your body is not very accurate. And it takes a while for the body to actually get into that fat loss mode. So taking that week into consideration isn't really a good idea if you're trying to see whether you're getting that proper rate of weight loss. So that first week, post that maintenance and the first week of a deficit is not accurate data, right? So you cut the carbs a little bit, you flush out some water weight, you get a gradual drop, or for some people, you get a huge drop in body weight. And now this can kind of skew the data for future calculations. So that 1 week isn't really a good idea. And now I actually recommend adding a second week on top of that as a week where you're not going to use that week as a determination whether you need to cut calories further or you need to stay in the current deficit. So now we got 2 more weeks on top of that as where you're gonna be in that caloric deficit, but you're not going to use this as real data. And then after the second week, and the reason why I'm adding the second week, especially for guys that are just starting out and for guys that are new to tracking their diet and for the guys that are just used to first time measuring your calories, maybe first time adding certain foods, that extra week will give you a little bit more consistency with your skills when it comes to tracking itself, because tracking itself, measuring your nutrition and keeping a food journal is a special skill that will take a time to develop, right? And now after those 2 weeks, which you don't take into consideration, now the actual 4-week period starts where you're gonna track everything. You're gonna track your body weight, you're gonna track your waist measurement, you're gonna track your caliper with a 4 point method, which I'm gonna link in the description below for you guys. In these 4 weeks, you're actually seeing, okay, is that amount of calories that I've set initially as a deficit actually getting me the average weight loss that I need? And for these 4 weeks, you're gonna be tracking weight every single day and taking the average weekly weight loss that you're getting from that. And the reason why I'm saying 4 weeks, why is it 4 weeks? Why is it not a week or two? Well, the more weeks you have, the less of a chance of an error you have, because now you have more data. And if there is some fluctuation, it's gonna average out. And another important factor here is that a lot of times when you're losing fat, the scale won't reflect that. So it's important to have enough of data as well as enough time to give your body a chance to show that progress. And this is often called as whooshy, squishy fat. And I got this term by Lyle McDonald, and I'm gonna leave his article in the description below as well as a link where he says that first time when you burn off some fat cells, when you have some fat loss, those fat cells get replaced by water initially. So you don't really see any progress. I mean, the scale is the same. Even the metrics like waist size is the same, but you've actually made progress, but it just isn't showing. And this can happen, and this is why we're giving ourselves 4 weeks, which is now a total of 8 weeks for the phase 1 in the diet, where you're probably losing fat, but you're not sure whether the diet is 100% on point at the moment, whether the calories are accurate or not. So after that 4-week period, then you will have enough data to determine whether you need to cut calories by 10% more, by a little bit more, by 5% more, or whatever the amount is, judging by that average weight change. But this takes 8 weeks, guys. This is not an overnight thing. And this is why a lot of people are trying to rush this process, and they're just trying to use an online calculator, and this often leads to mistakes, and it kind of leads to you making that critical mistake in the beginning, which is the beginning phase is the most crucial one, because oftentimes if you get that first 8 weeks right, you can probably ride that wave with a diet for the next 8 to 12 weeks while you continue losing body fat. You don't really need to make that many adjustments. And I mean, in terms of macros and how do you split those calories into macros, I'm gonna leave a link in the description below as well, as that goes into how to calculate your protein amounts, your carbs, your fats. So check that out for more details on that phase. But it's important to manage your calories. First and foremost, that is the most critical factor that I see guys getting wrong, and it's because of rushing, because you wanna get results fast. And I understand that. I wanna get results as fast as possible, you know. I would be lying to you if I would tell you, well, why would I do 12 weeks if I can just do it in 2 weeks? Well, of course, I mean, we want results fast, but why do we not look at long-term success? Because if you fail this first 6 weeks or the first 4 weeks of your diet, if you don't estimate properly, number one, you're gonna mismanage your expectations, you're gonna see that carb drop in weight, and you're gonna see, well, of course, I should be losing 3-4 pounds a week now because of my calories, which often doesn't happen, so people think that their diet doesn't work anymore. So that's kind of like one mistake. On the other hand, you might be seeing zero progress for the first couple of weeks, and you might undercut calories now even further than necessary because you haven't waited enough, and this will result in unnecessary muscle loss. This will result in more rapid hormonal changes where you're gonna get more hungry, you're gonna get more anxious, more stressful, you're gonna get even more water retention, and at the end of the day, you're gonna have very poor data to determine how many calories you actually should have eaten, because now your workouts are suffering. I mean, everything is suffering because you've undercut too fast, too soon, without actually looking at the reality, without actually trying to give your body a little bit of more time to get that accurate measurement as much as possible. Of course, it's never accurate, it's always an estimate. And this is something that I wanna really point out, that the word calculate itself is kind of a wrong word to use for this, because everything that we're doing here is an estimate. It's not a calculation, it's an estimation. And we have to master the art of adjusting the diet over time and not just focused on the initial numbers, and if that doesn't work, well, it doesn't work. No, it's about adjusting over time. And there's two possible scenarios. I'm gonna cut it here, but I'm gonna give you guys 2 possible scenarios in the future. So number 1 scenario is you gradually keep losing body fat, you gradually keep losing body weight. Maybe it takes a couple of weeks to reflect that change, but the progress is coming. And of course, it's gonna slow down eventually as your metabolism also adjusts, your body weight has been dropping, and in that case, you simply have to wait until that rate isn't as high. So it's gonna be somewhere between 0.5 to 1.5% of body weight per week loss, and once you drop below, let's say 0.5% of body weight loss per week for a couple of weeks in a row, it's probably a good idea to cut calories further or add a little bit more cardio or some other activity to boost that fat loss and to continue losing fat. The other scenario, and this is where a lot of people still make a lot of mistakes, and that is that all of a sudden, that week you don't lose any weight on the scale. So the scale all of a sudden, from losing, let's say, a pound per week goes to zero. And this is where a lot of people make a mistake. They think, okay, diet has stopped working, and diet is wrong. There's two scenarios here. Number one, water retention. Number two, that is the fact that you haven't been accurately measuring or you haven't stuck to your diet properly. So these are the two scenarios. It's not that diet overnight all of a sudden doesn't work. If it gave you those results for a couple of weeks, it's not gonna go from 1 pound to 0 pound overnight loss. It's probably the factor water retention due to stress, or you actually haven't been diligent with your diet, you haven't been disciplined, and this is something where you have to be real with yourself. You have to accept the fact that sometimes you can't track super accurately, but you gave your best, and it's okay if that weight scale hasn't changed. It's most likely water weight in a lot of cases. That is the case, so patience is your best friend here. Be a little bit more patient, give yourself enough time, give yourself a little bit more time before you decide whether to cut calories further or not. So these are the two possible scenarios. Of course, there's a lot of other factors involved here in dieting, changes in activity levels, changes in life stress, obligations, schedule, foods. A lot of these other factors can influence the scale weight, but that's why we're using the waist measurement, that's why we're using the caliper, that's why we're looking at strength in the gym. We're looking at all these metrics, and the more metrics you have, of course, the more of a better decision you can make. So that's something I wanted to share with you guys here. I hope this is helpful. This is a little bit of a more technical video for you guys that are really looking for technical details on how to set up your diet properly. Give it time, give it these 8 weeks, and I promise you, you will double your results compared to the average Joe that just cuts all the carbs and everything in the first couple of weeks and gets that initial weight loss because the water weight dropped, and now he doesn't see that weight loss continuing and he gets disappointed. He thinks the diet doesn't work. He starts binging and it repeats that cycle over and over again because he didn't take the necessary time, he didn't invest, he didn't take that patience and made the right decisions, and now that is basically the price he has to pay is no results or less results over time. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below if you made the mistake in the past of miscalculating your calories. If you find this helpful, let me know in the comments below. Aside from that, make sure that subscribe button below the sports channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.